What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Kopibros Show presented by the Chit Chatter Podcast Network. Now, today we are back with our newest Kopibros episode format where we are bringing back our past guests and then our viewers write in our new Ask Me Anything series. So, for our fourth episode of this series, we are very happy to bring back drummer Crystal. Hello, Crystal.
Hello, glad to be back.
Yeah, so Crystal, I think it's been a year since I last spoke to you. I think close to a year. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. I think it's been a year of more gigging as well as the regular teaching for me. Recent interesting thing that happened was my band Sangriento was on a tour to Taiwan. It's a mini tour really. We only played 2 days, 2 nights. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
I know that it was only two performances over 2 days. But how did this opportunity come about, and like how was the experience like performing in Taiwan?
It was pretty cool because we haven't played overseas for a long time. The last time we went was to Hong Kong in, I think, 2018, just like quite a while ago. So it's always nice to play for new audiences. And we met a really nice band there called Crescent Lament, who is another really, really good band. And it was so great to get to play with them and also hang out and just talk to them. Yeah, that was a nice opportunity that we had. I think a lot of Singapore bands have been visiting Taiwan recently. So they have some promoters there that help us to organize shows. And then we kind of just reach out to some bands that we're interested in playing with and just get in touch that way.
A lot of times we talk about indie scenes, like some of the bigger bands like Accused 5, this kind, they consider them indie. Because you said that there are more Singaporean bands going to Taiwan to perform. Is it because like the indie scene is bigger in Taiwan, or like in Singapore we are slowly venturing out to find new places to perform because our base is that small?
More of the latter. And also it's once one person or once one band starts and then your friends know that this works, it's easier to make connections. And language barrier wise, it's also easier because at least Chinese is something that we are at least passingly familiar with. I say passingly because there's only one member of my band that's fluent in Chinese, but it could be worse. Yeah. So it's quite a comfortable place to go and tour.
Like the crowd in Taiwan, is it any different from Singapore? Like, are they more receptive of this kind of indie bands? Like, do you see a bigger crowd?
In our case, like Sangriento is really very niche because metal is already a niche, and then symphonic metal is a smaller niche. And if we try and add a storytelling aspect, that's a non-existent niche. So I don't think we're particularly representative of that, but the people that showed up were pretty supportive. I think there are some similarities in that the audience is a bit reserved, but that could be because of our niche within a niche, that we don't really attract the hardcore moshers. Slightly quieter but supportive crowds.
So when you say you reach out to certain bands to perform together with you, is it because like to put a whole performance together, there is not just your band, you have like I guess 2 or 3 bands in one concert?
Yeah, pretty much. So we had one opening band, which was a Taiwanese band, and then we played the main set.
Before our episode, a word from our sponsor. This week's episode of the Chit Chatter is brought to you by our friends at SMSDome, a Singapore-based marketing company that helps brands reach households through targeted campaigns. They are the team behind the Try Leh Booklet, a curated pack of deals, promos, and freebies from different brands across Singapore. Now, this National Day edition is their feature booklet for the months of July and August, available as both an e-booklet and a physical coupon pack delivered right to residents' letterboxes and screens, so you can discover new products and stretch your dollar this National Day. Inside this Try Leh National Day e-booklet, you will find meaningful features like the one from NKF, the National Kidney Foundation, known for supporting kidney patients in Singapore and raising awareness about kidney health. They are inviting you to learn more about kidney diseases and pledge your support for low-income patients who rely on life-saving dialysis treatments, exclusively highlighted through the Try Leh booklet, so you can take a simple step to protect your own health while helping fellow Singaporeans in need. It is the perfect time to scan the NKF section in the booklet, explore their resources on kidney health, and consider becoming a regular supporter while the National Day specials are still running. So whether you are hunting for dining deals, beauty promos, everyday essentials, or a meaningful cause to support, the Try Leh National Day edition has something for everyone. Just head to the link in our episode description to check out the latest Try Leh National Day e-booklet today. And now back to the episode. Okay, so we are really glad that you have decided to come back for this new Q&A format. So for a bit of context, we put out a call for questions, and today we'll be asking Crystal the ones our viewers and listeners have all sent in. And I have to say the range is actually quite massive. But just to add a little more context, all the questions will remain completely anonymous. Although the subject matter is not quote-unquote sensitive, but we just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable lah. The first question that our viewers have posted is that what is a stereotype about being a drummer that irritates you and annoys you? And what is a stereotype about a drummer that is actually correct?
The main drummer stereotype is that, drummers are kind of dumb and just hit stuff with wild abandon, like Animal from the Muppets. And I think I had this conversation with one of my students recently where she was just laughing to herself because we spent, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes just working on a very smooth movement technique. And it was like getting into this meditative state of mind to try and make sure you're moving in a very relaxed and controlled fashion. And then she just started laughing because she's like, wow, my friends are never going to believe that this is what I come to drum lesson to do. They probably think that in drum lesson, you're just like, smashing the drums and cymbals. But here we are sitting quietly, practically meditating and just trying to get this movement to be smooth. I think the reality is that there's actually a lot of patience that goes into drumming. You have to be very patient with yourself and to be able to relax in order to play smoothly. On the other hand, a stereotype that is perhaps a bit true, a similar related tangent to the stereotype that drummers are dumb, is that drummers aren't musicians. Of course, there are very musical drummers as well, just as there are very cerebral drummers. But I think the unfortunate truth to that stereotype is that there can be a lot of drummers that don't pay attention to the music maybe as much as they should, because you can kind of get away with not really listening to the rest of your band and still be a pretty okay drummer. But I feel like that's not the best way to really be a musician in that sense.
So I wanted to clarify on your first stereotype, quote-unquote stereotype. You said that you and your students sat in silence, not actually drumming, but working through the flow, right? So am I right to assume that this is more like a mental workout of like, I'm going to hit the drums here and then this is 3-beat, this kind of thing? Is it like more like mental walkthrough before you actually start
not so much that. We were actually playing, but it was like on a practice pad, just getting the movement of the sticks in your hands. It's not like wildly hitting things. It's very controlled and very working on consistency, working on your breathing, making sure you're playing smoothly, that kind of thing.
That is for our first question. Our second question is it normal for drummers to have wrist pain and joint aches?
Definitely not. If you're getting wrist pains and joint aches, you should relook your technique. Some people say that there's no right or wrong technique, but I think everyone can agree that the wrong technique is the one that injures you, because your health is very important. You only have one pair of hands. You only have two hands, so you don't want to injure them and not be able to play anymore. So if you're having joint pains, a lot of times you need to work on muscular strength. Like it could be because you don't have enough muscles, therefore you're damaging your joints, or it could just be you are holding the sticks with too much tension and you're absorbing all that energy into your hand and your joints instead of letting the energy dissipate by holding it with a looser grip. Yeah, if you're the person who asked this question and you have a lot of pains while drumming, please go see a drum teacher and figure out a more ergonomic way to play your instrument without being kind of self-destructive, basically.
Okay, then now this piqued my interest. What are some of the exercises that drummers can do to like sort of strengthen the wrist or like this part of the hand where I guess that's most stress, right, when you play?
In terms of exercise, I'm not the most qualified because I'm not a fitness trainer. But for this kind of wrist movement, it's like this muscle here, that's the one, because there's actually no muscles in your hand, it's just tendons. So things you can do, you can look up arm exercise like wrist curls and stuff that strengthens like these muscles here.
What are some of the more common like injuries that drummers have regarding the wrist and the hand? Like I would guess inflammation might be one of the more common ones. If you play too much, you get inflamed.
Yeah, definitely carpal tunnel is every drummer's worst nightmare. So I do know some drummers that entirely retired from playing because it's just too bad and they couldn't play anymore. Two main areas that we need to take care of as musicians, I think, is our hearing and our joints, especially for drummers. So yeah, just be careful because those are some things that once you kind of damage them irreversibly, you just can't get it back.
How do you protect your hearing? Because every time I go to bands, right, sometimes I do feel that the band is too loud. I don't know whether it's the acoustic or whether, they're just too happy playing the song. So how do you like protect your sense of hearing when, you have to play loud? You have to make sure that the people at the back gets to hear you also.
Exactly these. Yep. And
earpiece.
wear earplugs if you're playing for an extended period of time at above a certain volume, because drums are really loud, and if you're in a small room, the echoes kind of make it even worse. So, yep. All musicians who play louder music should definitely use hearing protection.
The next question, right, actually, I think is sort of related to the second one, which is that is there a proper technique that a drummer should have when holding a stick as a beginner?
Definitely there is a proper technique, which is why even if they want to be self-taught, they want to learn on their own, I would still advise like check in with a drummer or a drum teacher at least for one lesson, just to make sure your technique is on the right track, because it can be really hard to unlearn the bad habits. Things like holding the stick too tightly. I don't know if you can kind of hear it here, but if I hold the sticks really tightly, there's this kind of dead sound, versus if I hold it loosely, there's resonance to it.
Oh,
So
yes.
even as a beginner, you would still want to have a loose grip. A lot of beginners, they're just paranoid of dropping the stick, and then they hold on to it. Like I can see their thumbs turning yellow at the sides or like going white because they're gripping so tightly. Ideally, you should be holding it loose enough that that resonance can happen, and also you're not absorbing all that vibration into your joints, like we talked about in the previous question. Yeah, and another thing is just being able to use your wrist when you play. A lot of people sometimes just teach holding with these two fingers, and then you end up playing like this with these fingers hanging off on the sides. But if you look at professional drummers playing, they are using their whole hand to hold the stick and moving their wrists as well as fingers, rather than just this and flopping around in your hand. So I mean, that's just a common beginner mistake that I sometimes see. So yes, I would say there are definitely some guidelines beginners can use when they're starting out on drums, and that's why I really prioritize teaching good technique in my classes.
Okay, then would you suggest beginners start with the holding spoon method or holding chopstick method for the left hand?
I'm assuming you're talking about traditional grip versus matched grip. Versus
Yes.
this?
Sorry, I'm not a
Right.
drummer. I can't come up with a better. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I can't
So
come up with a
this
better
is-
description. Yes.
This is traditional grip. This is match grip. The reason for traditional grip was in the past when drummers were playing drums, they were actually marching with their drums on a shoulder sling and the drum was slanted. So holding it at this angle means you can hit parallel to the surface of the drum without looking really dumb and holding it like this. So
Okay.
that's basically where traditional grip originated. You could talk to any jazz cat about this. They'll probably have more things to say about why some people prefer to play traditional grip, usually in the genre of jazz. But for majority of us, it's not the most necessary. So I would say for beginners, unless you really like how it looks and you intend to play jazz, you can quite safely focus on matched grip.
Because I find it very hard to describe to you how the thing will look like, except I'm thinking, okay, you're using, okay, never mind. Not the best
I
description.
still got you.
Next question. When supporting a vocalist, what cues do you listen for to decide whether to simplify or embellish your parts?
This one is a bit tricky because it does depend on what genre you're playing. Because let's say you're just playing for a singer-songwriter, you're probably going to play relatively more simple. But if you're playing, like there's a vocal part, but you're in a progressive or math rock band, just by virtue of the genre, you're still probably going to play a little bit more complicated. Generally, in terms of speaking, I focus a lot on the melody when someone's singing. And then there's basically two reasons why you would play more. One is to emphasize certain parts of the melody, or one is to fill space. So the easiest way to think of fills is you play more when there's less going on. So if they kind of sing one line and then there's like space at the end after they finish singing, that's when you can usually play a bit more. But if during that part of the melody there's certain words that are going to be emphasized, and this also depends on the music arrangement, like where is the rest of the band playing a certain chord? Are they emphasizing certain words the vocalist is singing? So if that comes together, then the drummer might also want to emphasize those things in their playing.
Is my next follow-up question, which is that I recently followed I recently started following a Malaysian Chinese band, and then I realized that because the drummer films himself during performances, and his band actually talk to each other when they play. I find it very distracting. So I wonder whether you guys do that too when you all put in the earpiece. Do you all talk to each other like through the earpiece? Drummer to like vocalist or drummer to guitarist?
We do have comms mics in my church when we're playing. At least some of us will have comms mics. Symphonic metal band, we don't talk to each other while we're playing. But I guess that can be useful in somewhat more improvisational settings. So, for example, in church playing, someone might call a different chord progression, and then we can all shift the tone of the music at that point based on whatever they call. We feel that, the music should go in a different direction, then we can say something. But it also takes a bit of discipline not to talk too much and kind of be annoying to everyone else in your band. So it really depends on what you and your team are used to.
Then the last question for this portion of the Q&A is, what are your views on the movie Whiplash, and do you feel it accurately portrays the trials of being a drummer in the pursuit of perfection?
Okay, so Whiplash. I did see this movie in the theaters when it first came out. So that was a long time ago. I think it was 2018. I can't remember when it came out. But so my recollections may be a bit hazy. But I went with a drum teacher colleague of mine at the time, and we were both basically laughing our heads off at how ridiculous it was. So I find it quite absurd. From a drummer perspective, it's quite laughable because obviously the protagonist, I'm sure he's a fantastic actor, but his drum chops, his technique, for example, was not that of a jazz drummer. So any drummer just looking at his hands would know, like, you're not a jazz drummer. You don't hold the sticks like a jazz drummer, and you don't hit the drums like a jazz drummer. What are you doing? Among other technical discrepancies, shall we say. But I guess they weren't really aiming at accuracy. They were just aiming at conveying a certain feel. Of course, there's the blood all over the drums scene while he's practicing, which is also hilarious because if you're playing until you bleed, you probably have really bad technique. And the only time usually that drummers' hands will bleed is if they're really intense punk rock or heavy metal drummers and they're really, really playing super hard at, I don't know, outdoor festivals where you really have to hit really hard, or you miss the drum and you crack open your knuckles on the rim, something like that. But if you're bleeding all over the place in your own practice, I think you need help. That shouldn't be happening. So that wasn't very realistic. Well, I didn't go through jazz ensemble, but I don't think the conductor's behavior was particularly realistic. I guess some conductors might be abusive, but that was a bit much. And the other thing that Whiplash didn't really touch on, in my vague memory, music is not just about you and the conductor, it's about the whole ensemble. And I don't recall there being a lot of development of the protagonist's relationship with people in the band. It was like him and the
Correct.
conductor and whatever drama they went through. I went through the concert band route, and from my recollection, no insult to my conductors, but I don't remember much interaction with my conductors. Most of my formative experiences with band were just with everyone else in the band, and that's part of the joy of making music together. And the way Whiplash, at least the impression it left on me, it was very much an individual journey in music and his issues with the conductor, and then him going to practice like a madman. And it's a very individual journey of things. Whereas I think music, a lot of music, and especially
Dramatized.
drums, yes, very much dramatized. Especially drums are a horrible solo instrument. And I mean that in the kindest way. But for me, the joy in playing drums is playing with other people. It's a very support role instrument, and that wasn't really touched on. So besides the technical issues overall, yeah, I guess it was its own show, but not very much accurate in terms of the portrayal of drumming. But that said, if it gets like younger kids interested in drumming and hopefully they figure out a more balanced idea of what drums are, then I would say, it's not a bad thing all in all.
So this week's episode of the Chit Chatter Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Eaglewings Cinematics, offering one of the most premium cinema experiences you can find right here in Singapore. Located at KAP Mall, Eaglewings isn't your typical cinema chain. It's a boutique cinema experience that blends comfort, style, and community with 5 uniquely themed halls. Every visit feels fresh and memorable, whether you're planning a date night, a family outing, or a special celebration.
Eaglewings is about more than just movies. They take cinema dining to the next level with a wide variety of dishes from their award-winning Eaglewings Loft menu. From lobster risotto and wagyu burgers to pizza, pasta, you can enjoy restaurant quality food delivered straight to your seat while you watch your movie. If you're looking for an even more premium experience, selected ticket classes also give you access to their exclusive lounge where you can enjoy complimentary coffee, tea or soft drinks, and even relax in a massage chair before your movie begins.
And what truly sets Eaglewing apart is that they offer much more than just the latest blockbuster. They also host private screenings for special occasions including birthday parties, corporate events, and even unforgettable wedding proposals. So don't forget to download the Eaglewings app where you'll unlock a range of exclusive perks and reward, not only for your cinema visits but also at participating outlets throughout KAP Mall.
Head down to Eaglewings Cinematics at KAP Mall or visit their website to book your tickets today. Once again, a huge thank you to Eaglewings Cinematics for sponsoring this week's episode of the Chit Chatter Podcast. And we can move on to the second part of the Q&A, where I think you set a context by saying that some of these questions you'll be happy to discuss, but there isn't such a straightforward answer because I feel that some of the questions are more, they are more polarizing, they are more like open for discussions kind of. Playing older, quote-unquote, older Christian songs or newer ones. So the person wanted to ask which one is harder. So the example given here is Hillsong or Don Moen. I think Don Moen versus Elevation.
So this is a tricky question because I'm not really sure what is meant by harder. So harder in terms of technical difficulty, the older and newer Christian songs, I guess, is just talking about different generations in trends in Christian music, honestly. And in terms of technical difficulty, I don't think worship music is very, very technically difficult because ultimately it's still, number one, the priority is not the instruments. The priority is the vocals. It's the singing part because that's the main meaning of worship is in the words. So a lot of times the instrumental parts can take a backseat to that. And also because a lot of worship songs are meant to be played by congregations. So the difficulty is not that crazy. That said, I would say that there are some slightly more challenging songs that in the older generation as well as in the newer generation, because it really just depends on the songwriters. But in terms of the difference between the older sounds and the modern sounds, the older songs, one possible benefit when we play them now is sometimes the sound of the 90s is just so out of date that we do need to update the entire arrangement when we play it in our services. That means that church teams can kind of put their own spin on it. Because if you did it exactly like they did in 1994, it's just going to sound weird. It doesn't sound like what we're used to nowadays. So that can be a good and bad thing, right? Depending on what level you're at, you can actually make it more or less complex. But the thing about new songs that are often written today, I feel maybe written to appeal to congregations, I don't know, to the current audience. And the way we consume music now is a bit different. So for example, now churches can use multi-tracks, which is where you can actually buy the original stems, individual parts. So let's say you don't have 6 guitar players and they had 6 guitar tracks. You can buy those and put them in the backing track. You run it with a click. The congregation will hear the additional sounds. Because of that, you end up having to play to the track a little bit more precisely. You don't have as much wiggle room if you're really playing with that track. Drum parts in this era sometimes tend to sound very similar. After a while, I think there was this period where we started getting a lot of Tom Groove songs. They just start all sounding very similar, and I'm not really sure why. Church music aside, even in terms of consumption of media, I feel like in a lot of times we're just having sequels of things. Consumerist type culture that we've had, it ends up a little bit insular sometimes because people want to write music that sells. And that's the only way to get it out there. And unfortunately, that can mean we get more familiar sounding things because the majority of people are comfortable with that song. And this is kind of derailed from the question entirely, but that's just a thought I had when thinking about the difference between older music and the current music. We could go into a whole other discussion about how music consumption habits have changed and how media consumption habits have changed, but I think that's entirely not what this person was trying to ask.
Okay, I think we can conclude by saying that some of the mainstream music consumption, some of the trends is also reflected in Christianity music playing as well or composing as well, right? Because some of the trends you say that about about some motifs repeating, some of the drum things getting more and more repetitive, not so adventurous anymore. I sort of see in modern contemporary music as well. Some of the beats, same beat in different key or like different tempo only, and then they just go viral for no reason. So the next question I want to ask you is that is there a song you feel perfectly encapsulates the perfect sound mixing of a drum set and why?
Yeah, I don't. I'll just put it there. So I don't think there can be a particular song that is the perfect drum mix because a good mix is very much dependent on the genre and it depends on the rest of the band as well. One mix that is perfect for song A in genre B is probably not the best for song C in genre D because it's just a totally different thing. But I will say that generally I don't prefer an over-processed drum sound because, or like an oversampled drum sound, although I do recognize the utility of samples to, make a good mix. But I do like hearing the drummer rather than just the drums, if that makes sense. So one song that stood out to me when I heard it was Lady Day and John Coltrane by Gil Scott-Heron, I think. And that jumped out at me when I heard it because the drum fills played in that song were not super complicated. In fact, I'm sure you as a non-drummer know this or have heard this fill, which is like right? It's like 4 going down the drums.
Yeah.
That was a fill used in this song, and it's like the basic 101 that a non-drummer will try to play on a drum set, but it sounded so good. And I was like, what is going on? How is this drum fill 101 sounding so amazing in the context of the song? And then later I realized that the drummer on that song was Bernard Purdie, who is kind of a legendary drummer with super good pocket and feel and stuff like that. So that mix was probably not the best recorded mix because I think it's from the 70s or something like that. But there's something about how authentic that sound was combined with the player, of course, and in the context of good music that just ties it all together and made even a simple drum part sound so amazing that it caught my ear. So anyone listening, if you haven't heard that, go check it out.
Okay, the next question I want to ask is, if you could pick one song to get someone into learning drums, what song would you pick and why?
Yeah, this is another really hard one because...
Okay, then how about how I ask you, what was the song that made you fall in love with drums? I know you started off in band and sort of like, oh, you can't play instruments, so you go to percussion kind of thing. But what was the one song that made you like, oh, I want to play the drum set?
So interestingly, there was no such song for me. There was no one song that made me want to play the drums at all. I just saw a drummer playing and I thought she looked cool. If I were to answer that original question, I would say it depends on the person who is learning, what motivates them, what inspires them. So I would say maybe just a song from one of their favorite bands. That would be something that motivates that person because you can have a cool drum beat, but if that person just hates this band or hates this genre of music, it's not going to make them want to play it. And it also depends on the person's personality. I'm not sure how to put this nicely, but if they're an easily discouraged person, like there's some people that just need to take the small wins. They might need to learn how to play a simple drum part that can sound good really quickly. And then they might get that confidence to feel like, I can play the drums. So, for example, We Will Rock You, right? The doom, ga. Pretty straightforward, but if you can hold that and it's like, you can play to a song. Or Wake Me Up When September Ends, pretty easy. Doom, tra, doom, da. Like those would be good starting beats for someone who feels like they have no rhythm, they can't do it. Being able to play a song that shows you that you can do it, that can motivate some people. But not everyone's personality is like that. Some people need to be challenged and they need to learn some kind of a complicated a more complex beat.
Mm.
So yeah, it really depends. And so this is why when I get new students, I tell them like it takes us a couple sessions to get to know each other, because learning is not a one size fits all. It's not a linear thing. And even knowing what inspires someone or inspires yourself, if you're thinking of what motivates you, that can take a little bit of introspection to figure out what is that thing that will really motivate you as an individual. And that's what I love about teaching, because everyone is different. It's not the same thing for every class.
The last question I want to ask, right? I will slightly rephrase this question because I think I know what he's trying to say. Like you say, a lot of times the drum is always the one supporting the whole band, right? The feature is always either the singer, or sometimes they have guitars or whatnot, or keyboard. But is there a band that you feel that the character of the drum is so strong that the drummer sometimes stand out and, you know, influence how the whole band is, or how the whole band plays?
That one I really don't have a straight answer to, because I feel like everyone brings their own personality to the band they play with. And even when you sort of replace drummers, it can change the vibe of the band a bit. So one good example now is Rush, which previously had the drummer Neil Peart. And he brought so much to the drums because he wasn't just the drummer, he was also the songwriter. And so a lot of Rush songs, like the drum parts and the rhythms and the time signature changes, are so interwoven with the melody and the beats that it's just a very Neil Peart thing to do. And he's the guy also writing lyrics for the songs. So like it just makes everything more meaningful. But now Annika Niles has taken over playing drums for Rush, and she's doing a great job. And the way, well, I haven't seen a lot of her play, but there's been a few video clips that have surfaced, and the way she's interpreting those parts is like paying tribute to Neil Peart while also putting her own spin on it. And I think that's such a great thing to be able to hear and see. So yeah, I think a lot of drummers have their own recognizable spins on bands, and even the same band with a different drummer can just have a slightly different personality.
I really think we learned a lot from you today. And for whatever reason, after you came back from all the technical difficulties, you sound and look good. Really, like now I can see you without all the lag. You know, your camera is like, I
It
think,
was
even
really
clearer than mine. I
laggy
don't know what
earlier.
happened. To close off our episode, can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, so for social media, I'm mostly active on Instagram at Stalj, STALJ, and on YouTube as well. That's CHRISTAL J.KUNA. Those are the main two platforms that I'm using at the moment.
Thank you, Crystal. Always so much to have you on the podcast, and we would love to bring you back probably, I don't know, another year, if we
Maybe
survive.
next year.